Good afternoon again, everybody. We're still in the market beef division. We're just getting started up with the after lunch break portion. Red Angus steers you see coming into the show ring. This is the one and only group of Red Angus steers. 10 listed in the program, and there are 10 coming into the show ring. So we are 1 for 1 out of the gate here this afternoon. And it is just barely afternoon. It is 12:01 here on the clock in front of me. Darby Dalby, Traven Larson, Emma Larson, Hayden Kristen, Bailey Kristen, Dagan Dalby, Cash Gracie, Kazan Kaufman-Smith, Quaid Smith, and Brindley Chaplin. All out there competing in this Red Angus steers division, 1,056 to 1,544 pounds. The 1,544 pound steer is being shown by Brindley Chaplin here this afternoon. And thank you very much to all of the sponsors you are seeing scroll across your screen today. Want to take a moment and thank a few more of those sponsors. Our Purple Ribbon sponsors include Custer Public Power District, Agri Affiliates, Full Circle Irrigation, Myers Iron Salvage and Roll-Offs, Adams Land and Cattle, Lashley Land and Recreational Brokers, Moline Seed and Fence, Trotter Service and Trotter Fertilizer, the Grocery Cart, the Custer County Ag Society, Pearson Physical Therapy, Nebraska State Bank, Healing Hearts and Families, and A1 Auto Repair. Again, market heifers, or excuse me, Red Angus steers is what we're on. I'll update my text on the screen for you here. Again, looking back on our market beef division so far, in market heifers, Talon Tobias was your champion. Charlie Pandorf was your reserve champion. Champion shorthorn steer was shown by Trip Oxford. Reserve shorthorn steer was shown by Laney Palmer. Champion Hereford steer was shown by Casey Nelson. Reserve Hereford steer was shown by Emma Stahlbaumer. Earlier on today, we had beef showmanship. Your overall grand champion, beef showman, was Abby Stahlbaumer. Your overall reserve champion, beef showman, was Mahia Jones. Those two were also in those same positions in the senior division. Your juniors in showmanship, champion Addison Dalrymple, reserve champion Callie Nelson. And in pre-junior showmanship, your champion was Burke Blakeman. Your reserve champion was Talon Tobias. As we now continue on with Red Angus steers, again 10 of them in this division, working their way into the front part of the arena. Since there is just one group of red Angus steers, my anticipation is we will have a champion and reserve champion chosen right out of this group. I also wouldn't be surprised if I'm proven wrong on that, so we'll just stay on our toes. The 4 at the bottom of your screen are the 4 remaining. Again, the past has shown us that they're often pulled up in order up there along the top side of the ring. So this young lady moving up would be in 4th if that holds true. That would mean right there on the right-hand side of your screen would be falling in place, 2nd place, and then 1st place. I believe 1st place is going, oh, couldn't quite see his name tag.
Just in terms of type and kind and where they're at and finish standpoint, but the young man's kind of dark red steer here is going to win the class, and I think this one just combines the most amount of good. I think he's one that certainly gets out and moves pretty well when you set him into motion. When you step in behind him, he is one of the stouter feature steers out here, and when you get your hands on him, he is fresh, and I think he's one that's got an appropriate amount of finish. He's also deep-bodied, so a nice steer to start off the class there. The young man steer that's going to come second, I think maybe one that doesn't have quite as much length to him as that one that wins this particular class, but one that does have some softness through the center portion of his body. I think he's really good in terms of just where he's at finish-wise. He's certainly going to hang some pounds on the rail. Just a nice steer that's really practical there in second. The young lady's steer standing in 3rd here, I think one that does have some natural muscle shape and expression. He gets out and goes pretty well. He does give you kind of that soft-made, easy-feeding type of look. He's got some depth of body and curvature to his rib. He is one that's maybe just getting a little more fat cover on him in comparison to those 2 ahead of him, maybe a little bit more stale when you start to handle him, but a nice steer there. The young lady steer that's coming next, I think in terms of eye appeal and one that you get on the side, I think this one is the most attractive steer from a profile standpoint. But with that being said, he's just a little more narrow than those steers that are going to stand up above him. Could use a little bit more time on feed, but a nice steer for her. Young man steer that comes next, I think one that certainly has some finish to him. He has some muscle shape. He just maybe gives up a little bit of shape through that lower 1/3 of his body. It's just a little bit flatter when you step in right behind him and read him from hooks to pins there. The young lady's kind of lighter red steer, orangish steer that comes next. One that I think when you study him at the ground, he gets out and goes well. He's got some length of body. He's maybe just not the prettiest steer out here, but I think one that's certainly functional. He just needs a few more days on feed to be at an appropriate amount of finish, but one that I like a lot in terms of just functionality. The steer that's going to come next maybe just gets a little bit shorter sided. I think he's one that doesn't get out and go quite as well, just gets a little bit longer toed. He maybe doesn't have quite as much to him, and through that forerib and a flank, he gets a little bit tighter there, but a nice steer there for her as well. The big steer that's going to come next, obviously one of the bigger frame type steers. He's really long sided. I think one that has some shape and dimension from hooks to pins, but he does get pretty tight there through that center 1/3 of his body. I'd like to just soften him up and give him a shot more depth. A little bit more time on feed to go any higher today. The young lady steer that comes next, obviously the moderate frame steer of the class, but I think one that is starting to actually get some finish on him. He handles pretty fresh. He is just a touch moderate for my preferences, but a nice steer there for her. And the young man that rounds out the class, nice steer as well, just needs a little bit more time on feed. One that's got some length of body, he gets out and goes, just needs more to him to be able to compete with those steers ahead of him, but a nice class of red Angus steers.
And again, we'll wait for the announcement. The young man who came in first did not have a back tag that matched any of the back tags in the program here.
Second call, sentimental steers 1,436 pounds to 1,626 pounds. Second call, sentimental steers 1,436 pounds to 1,626 pounds. First call, Charlet steers 1,150 pounds to 1,570 pounds. First call, Charlet steers 1,150 pounds to 1,570 pounds.
Sentimental steers, Group 1 coming in. We'll announce their names in a moment.
Champion Red Angus steer goes to Quade Smith. Reserve Red Angus steer goes to Kazan Kaufman Smith. Purple goes to Brinley Chaplin. Fourth purple goes to Hayden Kristen. First blue goes to Dagan Dalby. Second blue goes to Bailey Kristen. Third blue goes to Emma Larson. Fourth blue goes to Cash Gracie. First red goes to Darby Dalby. Second red goes to Tarvin Larson. Raven Larson.
So as you heard there, Quade Smith, your champion, reserve champion, Kazan Kaufman Smith. As we move on to Simmental steers. Group 1 of 2, Haley Rosiski, Keelan Shea, Shaylee Coleman, Cade Smith, Macy Smith, Blake Bodorf, Regan Fleece, and Ava Bodorf in this Simmental steers group. Again, if you're just joining us today, really hard for us to film along that top part of the show ring. Very bright over there from the sun. The camera has a hard time deciding whether it wants to focus on the items outside of the show ring or the items on the inside of the show ring, so it kind of just makes that middle ground decision. For some of us, it's a little bit too light. For some of us, it's a little bit too dark, but that middle ground is kind of the best we can hope with that sun coming in on that north side of the show ring. Apologies for that if it's a little bit hard to view. First pulled up is Shaylee Coleman. And then Keelan Shea. I am following right behind, coming off the right-hand side of your screen. I believe that was Blake Bodorf. Right behind him comes Ava Bodorf. And we have 4 remaining. So I believe it'll be Regan Fleece as second purple. First purple will go to Cade Smith, I believe.
A really nice
I think Cade will make his way over there.
Here. I think it's pretty close on this top pair, just some give and take between the two, but I'm going to go with the young man's black and white steer to win the class. I think when it comes down to it, this one is more shapely, especially out the top side of his blade. This one's really wide. I think he's got plenty of expression through his loin and ribeye. He's big-footed. He's really soft-centered, one that gives you a really nice look when you get him on the profile. Just a really good kind of combination steer to start the class. If you were going to change him, I would maybe free him up just a notch and send him into motion just a bit smoother, but a nice steer to start off this class. The young lady's red steer that's going to come second, I think one that maybe does get out and go just a notch better, especially off those rear two, but I think he is one that does is just a little bit flatter, especially right out the top side of his shoulder. I don't think he reads with quite as much shape in through his loin as ribeye, but certainly one that's got some depth of body. He gives you a pretty good look. He's pretty neat and attractive up through that front 1/3. I just like to give him just a touch more power when you step in behind him, but a nice steer there in second as well. Young lady's kind of black and white spotted steer that's going to come third. It just kind of gets outpowered in terms of depth of body, and those two that are going to come above him. I think he's one that has plenty of shape. He's really stout across the top side. He's really big pinned. I think he's one that has some foot and bone underneath him. He just gets a little bit tighter there in his flank, maybe not as soft made through the center third of his body in comparison to those steers ahead of him. The black and white steer, or white-bellied steer that's going to come fourth, I think one that does get out and go nice. He gives you a really good look from the side, and I like the design of this steer. I think he's just one that needs a little bit more time on feed. When you start to handle him over his 12th and 13th, he doesn't have quite as much cover on him as those steers ahead of him, but a nice steer there as well. The steer that's going to come next, a long-sided steer. He's got plenty of power and dimension. I think he's one that's got some depth of body. He's just maybe a little bit more plain in terms of his design. Doesn't come out as high out the top side of his shoulder as those couple steers above him, but a really good practical, functional type steer there for her. The young man's steer that comes next, a really long-sided steer. He certainly gets out and goes really well when you set him into motion. I would like to just soften him up through the center third of his body. I think he's one that maybe just gets a little bit tighter there in the forerib and in his flank. And then the smoky steer that comes next, another long-sided steer. He needs a little bit more time on feed. He's maybe not quite finished on over the 12th and 13th, but a nice practical steer there for her as well. The black white-footed steer here that comes next, I think one that does have some depth of body. He gets out and goes relatively well as you set him into motion. However, when you start to study them in terms of just muscle and power, I think he's one that is the flattest muscled steer out here, but a really nice class of sentimental steers, so congratulations to them.
Top two purples going to Cade Smith and Regan Fleece. Both out of, well, Cade is from Middle Loop 4-H and Regan is from Sand Hill Critters as our next group enters the ring. Group 2 of Sentimental steers, 1,434 pounds to 1,626 pounds. Mace Barron, Rex Grint, Laney Palmer, Jack Barron, Charlie Pandorf, and Bryce Chaplin all in this group, as we'll hear our ribbon announcements from group number 1, Sentimental steers.
In group 1 of Sentimental steers, purple goes to Caden Smith, goes to Regan Fleece. Purple goes to Macy Smith. Blue goes to Hallie Rizicki. Blue goes to Ava Botor. Blue goes to Blake Botor. Blue goes to Keelan Shea. Blue goes to Shaylee Coleman. Second call, Charley Steers, 1,150 pounds to 1,570 pounds. Second call, Charley Steers, 1,150 pounds to 1,570 pounds. First call, Crossbred Steers, 952 pounds to 1,284 pounds. First call, Crossbred Steers, 952 pounds to 1,284 pounds.
Again in this group, Mace Barron, Rex Grint, Laney Palmer, Jack Barron, Charlie Pandorf, and Bryce Chaplin. Purples from the first group went to Cade Smith, Macy Smith, and Regan Fleece. While we have a quick moment, want to thank another of our Purple Ribbon sponsors, Moline Seed and Fence. They serve farmers and ranchers by providing quality products at an affordable price. They're always looking for new products that will benefit farmers and ranchers. Their motto is simple: we operate out of our ranch to save your ranch money. Give them a call at 308-529-0781. That's Moline Seed and Fence, a Purple Ribbon sponsor of 2023 Custer County Fair coverage from KCNI KBBN Radio. Those two young people up there have already been pulled to the front. Next to be pulled up, Jack Barron. Still out there, Rex Grint, Charlie Pandorf, and Bryce Chaplin all trying for those purple ribbons as Bryce is pulled up.
Another nice class of sentimental steers here. I think maybe one that just doesn't grab you right away and you kind of gravitate towards, but the young lady's kind of Bronco-faced steer is going to win the class, and I think this one gets out and goes pretty well. He sits down on a lot of circumference of foot and bone underneath him, and he is one of the freshest steers in here. I think he's got an appropriate amount of fat cover on him, and I think he is the one that's the most naturally shapely and the most expressive over the top side of his skeleton. He's one that's stout and square from hooks to pins. He gives you a decent look, just a nice complete steer to start the class. I think maybe it gets a little bit more challenging from there. The young man's black steer that's going to be second, I think one that does have just the cutability advantage. He's a little more fresh. I think he's a little bit more appropriate in terms of just how much fat he's got on him. If I'm going to change him, I think he is one that's a little bit taller framed. I'd kind of like to maybe moderate him just a tick, give him a shot more belly, but a nice steer there in the second hole. The young man's big red steer that comes next, I think one that obviously has the pounds of product to him. He's stout. He's got a lot of muscle in him. I would like to change him from a structural standpoint. I think he's one that's pretty pulled apart and blown out in his shoulder, just kind of settling back in there at the angle of his shoulder, but a nice steer there as well. The young man's black steer that comes next, one that's got some depth of body. He gets out and goes relatively well. He's just maybe not as stoutly constructed as a couple of the others that are above him in class, but a nice made steer there as well. The white-faced steer that comes next, one that's long-sided, he gets out and goes all right. He maybe just doesn't have quite as much foot and bone underneath him, and I don't think he's quite as expressively muscled as the steer standing ahead of him, but a nice steer from him as well. The young lady steer that rounds out the class, I think one that has some length of body. He certainly has some performance to him. He's just maybe getting a little bit out-horsed. I don't think he's quite as stout-made when he's stepping behind him, and I guess the swelling on his hocks is a bit concerning to me, but a really nice class of sentimental steers here.
Okay, so we'll hear the announcement of the purples, and we'll see the purples come in from that group as well as we find our champion Simmental steer and our reserve Simmental steer here in a moment as we wait for the gate just off the right side of your screen to be opened. Do know one purple in that group went to Charlie Pandorf. The other young man's
in group 2
back
of
bid
Simmental steers,
couldn't read.
purples go to Charlie Pandorf, Rex Grint, Bryce Chaplin, Jack Barron. Blues go to Mace Barron and Laney Palmer.
Okay, so if it is all purples that come in, which it very well could be.
As the Simmental steers re-enter the arena, we'd like to thank our award sponsors.
Again, if it's all purples that enter, we'll see Cade Smith, Macy Smith, Regan Fleece, Rex Grint, Jack Barron, Charlie Pandorf, and Bryce Chaplin all entering back into the show ring. I forget year to year if it's just the first two purples or if it's all purples that re-enter to vie for champion and reserve champion. We will wait and see. So you see everyone there in the waiting area.
What if I just like undid your feet from there? How do you undo a feet? You're sped, stop. That really hurt. Yeah, why would you do that? It's getting real.
Again, right now we are determining champion sentimental and reserve sentimental steer.
Bear with us. We are going to pick a top 5 in the sentimental breed. So as we kind of start to, after we get pulling some of these, we will be bringing more in for a top 5 sentimental steers. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and talk the 4 that we've got out here. And the young man's black and white steer from that first class, a steer that I like quite a lot. I think he's one that reads with plenty of foot and bone to him. He's extremely fresh. He's got an appropriate amount of cover. He's really expressive. I mean, you could eat dinner on the top of this one. He's really wide made. I think he's one that's got a lot of shape. He's really stout pinned. I think he's one that's soft. Just a really nice steer there for him. Young lady steer that came from that second class, I think one that is really practical in terms of just fundamentally good. This one does it. He gets out and goes. He's relatively attractive from the side, maybe a little more plain in comparison to either two, but still one that's pretty neat up front. I think he's got some shape and dimension to him as well. Just maybe more of a practical type of look rather than a show steer type of presence out here. The red steer that was second from the first class, one that I really like a lot in terms of his shoulder forward. I think he's one that's got some length and extension. He's certainly probably the neatest fronted steer out here. He gets out and goes pretty well. He's definitely got some depth of body. He's maybe not the longest spine steer out here in this particular drive, but one that is fresh and has some substance to him as well. The black steer that was second from the second class, as we talked in class, maybe not just the deepest sided type of steer. He's a little more plain in terms of his design, but he is one that's practical. He's got some fat cover and some finish. I think he's pretty appropriate, certainly one that's going to hang a nice carcass. But with that being said, I guess there's a couple of them that have caught my attention and hit me pretty hard all day. So I'll start at your grand champion and we'll work down to 5. But let's give all these kids a big round of applause. Nice group of sentimental steers.
So your champion sentimental steer belongs to Cade Smith. And your reserve champion is also going to be from that first group, Regan Fleece. Congratulations to those two, and as you heard the judge say, we're going to have a few more sentimental steers come back in, and they're going to give a top 5. So 3 more will be chosen out of this group. And actually, they're already exiting up at the top. I think they were put in order. Those initial 4 were the top 4, and they'll pick a 5th here in front of us now. Charlet steer is up next. As you can clearly see there in the staging area. Was hoping for a little bit more sun today, make that picture a little bit brighter. There's still time though.
Champion sentimental steer goes to Cade Smith. Reserve sentimental market steer goes to Riggin Fleece. Third goes to Macy Smith. Fourth goes to Charlie Pandor. Fifth goes to Jack Barron. Again, thank you, banner sponsors, Kyle and Annette Geyser and family, and Josh and Christy Burkhorse and family.
As I said, Charlet Steers is up next. We'll have one group there, so we'll immediately be able to find a champion and reserve champion there. And then we will go to crossbred steers. As far as crossbred steers, we'll have 3 groups. And then Black Angus steers will be up next. And then bred and fed steers. And then after all of those groups, we'll be able to choose an overall champion and an overall reserve champion in market beef. That's when things get super fun. Again, want to take a moment and thank another one of our Purple Ribbon sponsors, Lashley Land and Recreational Brokers. They're proud to be serving the Custer County area. Right now, land is moving at a high rate of speed, so if you're considering selling your land, now is the time. Contact John Farley with Lashley Land to find out what your land might be worth. Call 308-530-7854 or check out lashleyland.com. Again, we're still waiting on this one and only group of Charlet steers between 1,150 to 1,570 pounds to head out into the show ring. Looks like they're going through some final checks and confirmations over there before heading on out. Again, names in this group: Taylon Tobias, Cordell Kristen, Mallory Bartok, Bailey Kristen, Caden Miller, Jenna Bartok, Reagan Babcock, Carly Bartok, Kirby Viter, and Paisley Setta. Try saying the middle part of that 5 times fast. Jenna Bartok, Reagan Babcock, Carly Bartok. These Charlet steers, definitely some of the more rowdy ones as far as not wanting to move and cooperate for today, or move at their own pace. They move eventually, but Bournemouth's Taylin Tobias has been working her tail off the entire time she's been here in the show ring. Her steer is not wanting to listen at all. She gets pulled up to the top. Pulled up next is Carly Bartok. This large class essentially being pulled up in 7th place. Judge taking a close look over the final 6 here. Pulled up next is Caden Miller, representing Ansley Junior Livestock, the only entry doing so here with Charley Steers. Also pulled up, you see there at the top right-hand part of your screen was Jenna Bartok. Still down here. Kirby Viter. Let's see, she just named out her top 3. We'll see what order they go in. Also down here in the top 3 is Reagan Babcock. I think Kirby Viter's Charley is going to be 3rd. And Reagan Babcock will go up last, so Reagan's will be in 1st.
Maybe one that gets a little bit more challenging to sort after you get past this first one, but one that wins really easily in my mind. I think one that's really big at the ground. When you get this steer stopped, I really like this steer. He gives you a really good look. He's really soft made through the center portion of his body. I think he's plenty shapely. He handles really good. He's got a good amount of fat on him. If I'm going to change him, I would like to free him up a little bit, but if I remember correctly, I liked this one quite a lot last year as well. So just a nice place to start the class. From there, I think it does get a little bit more challenging. I think there's some differences in terms of frame, in terms of muscle, and in terms of just structural integrity and some finish. But the young man's orange steer that's going to come second, by no means the most finished steer of this particular class, but I do like how soft he is. I think he is one of the bigger rib steers. I think when you set this one into motion, he is probably the most athletic steer on the move. He gives you a really nice look, and I think as you kind of project him a few weeks down the road, in terms of quality, that is the next highest quality steer here in class. The big white steer that comes third, one that reads with plenty of shape and dimension. I think he is one of the most expressively muscled steers of this particular class. He's really big in terms of his feet and legs. Certainly one that has a good amount of finish, one that's going to hang a nice carcass on the rail. Maybe just not quite as much depth of body, not quite as much fluidity when you set him into motion, but a nice steer there as well. The horn steer that comes next, I think one that gets a little bit more plain in his design in comparison to the three steers that stand above him, but when you get your hands on him, this one is fresh and he handles really nicely. I think he's one that's certainly going to hang a nice carcass for her. The big tall gray steer that comes next, I think one that has some length of body, gets out and goes pretty well. He's just a little more flat in terms of muscle shape, I think, especially when you step in behind him. He gets a little bit flatter through that lower third of his rear, but a nice steer there as well. The kind of brindley colored orange steer that comes next, one that I like a lot in terms of just topside expression. I think he's one that has a lot of loin and ribeye in him. He's certainly one that's stout from hooks to pins. He does get pretty tight through that center third of his body. I'd like to just soften him up and drop him down in his flank with a nice steer from him. Young lady's black nose steer that comes next, one that's got some length of body. He gets out and goes. He's just maybe not as expressively muscled as the steers that are going to stand above him, but a nice steer for her. The kind of butterscotch colored steer that's coming next, one that's pretty plain in terms of its design, but I think he does have some overall more depth of body than the couple of other steers that are standing below him, but a nice project for her. Young lady's kind of stout-featured steer here running around. I think one that has the length of body. He's got some natural shape and expression, but for me, he's just too hard doing. I think he's one that's pretty pinched in his forerib and in his flank, just needs more time on feed and just needs to be softened up a little bit. The steer that's going to round out the class, one that I think has the length of body. He gets out and goes. He's just pretty plain. I think the deepest portion of his body isn't his brisket. I would just like to soften him up, give him a shot more gut and a shot more power from behind, but a really nice class of Charolais steers. And so 1 through 5 will get the breed money as well.
All right, so Reagan Babcock in first, Cordell Kristen in second in Charolais steers. Your champion again, Reagan Babcock, her Charolais steer, and Cordell Kristen coming in as reserve Charolais steer champion.
Champion Charolais steer goes to Reagan Babcock. Reserve Charolais steer goes to Cordell Kristen. Purple goes to Kirby Bitter. Fourth purple goes to Jenna Bartok. Fifth purple goes to Paisley Sedat. First blue goes to Caden Miller. Second blue goes to Charlie Bartok.
All right, so again, congratulations to Reagan Babcock and Cordell Kristen. That brings us to first group of crossbred steers. Again, we are scheduled for 3 groups of crossbred steers here today. Want to take a moment and thank another of our Purple Ribbon sponsors, Adams Land and Cattle. From the feedlot to developing the industry's next major innovation, they are always looking for talented people and productive partnerships. Make sure you check out their website at adamslandandcattle.com for career opportunities. That is Adams Land and Cattle, a Purple Ribbon sponsor of 2023 Custer County Fair coverage. Your first group of crossbred steers entering the show ring right now between 952 to 1,284 pounds. Included are Sean Johnson, Georgia Guthrie, Casey Evans, Creighton Marsh, Stetson Guthrie, Jalen Young, and Jackson Guthrie. Again, 3 groups of crossbred steers on schedule for today. Again, moving right through things today. Rest of the schedule for today looks like this. Of course, we are in market beef classes. Big chunk of the schedule. This started at 8 a.m. with 4-H beef showmanship, followed by market beef classes. That is all the same group. Took a little bit of a lunch break right before noon. Next event is scheduled for 3 o'clock, FFA beef showmanship in breeding heifer and market beef. I'm guessing there will be a little bit of a break before that as we switch our gears from 4-H rather to FFA. That will wrap up our Tuesday. Wednesday, a busy day in store. FFA Stalker Feeder Show at 8 a.m., followed by the 4-H Stalker Feeder Show. At 9 a.m., 4-H Breeding Heifers, followed by Clover Kid Bucket Calf Parade, always a favorite of many. Then the Junior Herd and Best Group of 3 Beef. At 11 a.m., the 4-H and FFA beef fitting and showing contest. At 1 o'clock, the 4-H Dairy Cattle Show, as well as the 4-H Goat Show. That is followed by the FFA Goat Show, and FFA Dairy Cattle is at 3 o'clock. And then don't forget on Thursday, for the first time, we are going to be video broadcasting the 4-H and FFA livestock sale. As always, it will be on KCNI Pure Country Radio as well, so do keep that in mind. Of course, highly encourage you to show up and bid on some animals. These kids work very hard to show and prepare for showing here at the 4-H and FFA Custer County Fair. Again, this is the first group of crossbred steers, 952 to 1,284 pounds. First group of 3. Couple of them already being pulled up. Third pulled up is Creighton Marsh. That would be 6th place. So we've got our top 5 to determine now. Fourth place will go to Georgia Guthrie. And first place, if I'm reading that indication right, will go to Jackson Guthrie. Second place will go to Jalen Young. Again, we'll see the first 2 purples come back as we determine a champion and a reserve champion later on after Group 3 is done.
Class as as we get into the crossbred division. I'm not sure that there's one that just necessarily jumps out and grabs your attention right away, but as you kind of start to sort through them, the young man steer is going to win the class, and I think this one is pretty shapely across the top side of his skeleton. I think when you study one at the ground, he gets out and goes relatively smooth. I guess I like this steer just in terms of softness through the center portion of his body. I think he's got a little bit more rib shape, maybe just a touch more cover over the 12th and 13th, so a nice place to start the class. Young lady steer that's going to be next, one that's really long-sided, and you have to appreciate that about him. He gets out and moves really fluidly. I think he's one that's awfully sound structured. With that length, the body does make him just maybe not quite as deep through that center portion of his body. He gets a little bit tighter in his forerib and his flank. Could use just a little bit more fat cover on him. Young man steer that's going to come third, I think one that does have some width when you step in behind him. I guess when you set this one into motion, he kind of wants to roach up in his loin. Maybe doesn't balance up quite as nice as the steer standing ahead of him. Young lady steer that's going to come next, so a really moderate framed one. I would like to frame him up a little bit, but when it comes down to it, this one does have some muscle. He gets out and moves, and certainly one that after a few more days on feed is going to hang a nice carcass for her. The steer that comes next, I think one that just gets a little bit more disappointing when you step in behind him. He is probably one of the flatter muscled steers of the class, but certainly one that's got some depth of body, a nice project for her. Next steer, I think one that gets a little bit shorter sided, a little bit more plain in his design. Would just like to soften him up and give him a little more fat cover to go any higher today. And the young man steer that's going to round out the class just simply needs a little bit more time on feed. He's quite a few pounds below the other ones. You feed him some more and he's going to have a nice carcass, but nice classic crossbred steers there.
Oh, and my dog, and got the watermelon feed. That's what I'm supposed to do a couple more days.
Okay.
Second call, crossbred steers, 1,434 pounds to 1,620 pounds. Second call, crossbred steers, 1,434 pounds to 1,620 pounds. First call, black Angus steers, 1,024 pounds to 1,292 pounds. First call, black Angus steers, 1,024 pounds to 1,292 pounds. In group one, purples go to Jackson Guthrie, Jalen Young. Blues go to Stetson Guthrie, Georgia Guthrie, Casey Evans, Creighton Marsh, and red goes to Sean Johnson.
Again, we are in group number 2 of crossbred steers, 1,302 to 1,394 pounds. Tiana Hurlbert, Trip Oxford, Rayleigh Bachman, Allie Smith, Macklin Eberly, Emma Stahlbaumer, Mia Copley, Caden Goodman, Jace Shada, and Macklin Eberly, with another entry in group number 2 of crossbred steers. If I can hit the right button here. Welcome in Cadence Feldman. Cadence, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining me up here.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful day right now.
It is very
Nice and
nice.
cool.
It's staying more beautiful today than it was yesterday, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Got kind of the heat at the end of the day, but lots of people went over, enjoyed some dilly bars at the Free Pit Barbecue, which is a good way to end the day, so that's always a plus. Cadence is a 4-H'er herself, correct, as we talked?
Yes, I do all my stuff in Sherman County. So
And your things that you enter in include what again?
I do a lot of paintings, and do a lot of the crafts and paintings. And I tried animals one year, and it wasn't quite my thing. So
You've got the creative bug then.
yeah.
Good. I can't say I've tried anything more than just a paint by number.
Those are still fun though. You still get to be a little creative, I guess.
Yeah,
You get to choose if you want to follow the numbers or not.
that's true. You could just flip them.
Yeah.
Want to take a moment to thank another of our Purple Ribbon sponsors, Myers Iron Salvage and Roll-Offs. They can do it all. They offer optional roll-off containers and rural metal cleanup by bid process. They're open 6 days a week for you. Call the Iron Man, Rod, at 880-0309, or you can check out their website at myersironsalvage.com. Thank you to Myers Iron Salvage and Roll-Offs for being a Purple Ribbon sponsor for 2023 Custer County Fair coverage. Large group of crossbred steers here. This is group number 2 of 3. I believe it is the largest group of crossbred steers. We've already had a couple moved up to the top of the show ring, as you see there. And now we were left with our top 5. 2 of them on your screen there. Judge getting a closer look. Judge again this year is Bailey Heinrichs. Called back for a 2nd year in a row. Does a great job. I'm sure she appreciates the cooler temperatures as well. I remember commenting on just how warm she looked like she was at the end of the day on the main beef day last year rather. Top 4 pictured on your screen, right across the middle of your screen right there. Called over into 4th was Caden Goodman. Didn't catch the back number of the young lady in 3rd. And we'll see what order the last 2 fall into to determine our top 2. It will be Emma Stahlbaumer in 2nd. And in first, I believe that is Allie Smith.
Another good class of the crossbred steers. I think it's pretty close on this top pair. I'm going to use the young lady's black steer to win the class. I think he maybe just balances up just a notch better when you get him on the profile. But certainly a steer that gets out and moves. I think he's one that flexes pretty well off of both ends. He's one that has some natural width and dimension to him. He's pretty pulled apart in his chest floor, and he carries that width across the top side of his skeleton and out through his hip. So a nice place to start the class there with the black steer. Young lady's orange steer that's going to come second. I think one that probably does have just a shot more natural width to him. But with that being said, I think maybe he is one that doesn't balance up quite as well. Maybe wants to break right in behind his shoulder a little bit as you set him into motion. Maybe one that just doesn't tie quite as nicely into his head and neck as that steer that wins the class, but an awfully stout-made, deep-bodied steer in second. The painted up black and white steer that comes third, I think. One that's got some length of body. He's certainly got some foot and bone underneath him, and this one does have some shape. When you get your hands on him, he handles really fresh as well. I think he is one that could use just a shot more through that center body, just kind of give him a little more turn to his rib, a little more depth of body, but a nice steer there. Young man's red steer that comes fourth, I think one that's really practical. He's got some length of body. He gets out and goes. He's carrying a decent amount of cover, maybe just a couple more weeks on feed, and he's sure going to hang a nice carcass for him. Really sound-made functional steer there with the red steer. The baldy steer that's going to come next, I think one that just from a fundamental standpoint is pretty good. He gets out and goes. He has some muscle. He's got some depth of body. He's just maybe a little bit more plain in terms of his design about his head and his neck in comparison to those steers standing ahead of him. The next steer that comes out, the brockle-faced steer, I think pretty similar to that one walking right ahead of him, just a really functional, practical type of steer. You'd love to have a feedlot full of them. He just maybe needs just a tick more cover over his 12th and 13th to go any higher for me today. The kind of shorthorn influence steer that comes next, I think one that's got some depth of body. This one is surprising when you get your hands on him. I think he is one of the fresher steers in here, maybe just needs a shot more muscle to get any higher in the class. The white-faced steer that's going to come next, a really tall-made, kind of framey type of steer. I like this steer in terms of his feet and legs. I think he gets out and goes. But when you get in behind him, he's a little more disappointing. I think he's one of the flattest muscled steers of this particular class with the most amount of air underneath him. The kind of two steers that are around now, the young ladies that was ahead, I think one that has a shot more belly in terms of this bottom pair. Both of them could just use a little powered up, a few more days on feed to be a kind of a more appropriate terms of market finish, but a good class of crossbred steers there. Let's give these kids a round of applause.
So that rounds out group number 2 in crossbred steers. Allie Smith with first purple, second purple going to Emma Stahlbaum. That brings us to our last group of crossbred steers, group number 3. These are the big boys, 1,434 pounds to 1,620 pounds. Creighton Cook, Taryn Blakeman, Caden Miller, Rexton Ostrand, Burke Blakeman, Ashton Beamerwold, Brecken Doggett, and Burke Blakeman with a second entry in this crossbred steers group as well. After we have this group completed, we will determine a champion and reserve champion crossbred steer by bringing in all of, I believe, the top 2 finishers from each group. So we'll have 6 in there. That's what I'm hedging my bets on anyway. It might be slightly different than that. Not sure. Do you know Cadence?
I don't know.
It's taken me 4 years to learn the very little amount that I do know. So I applaud these kids for what they do know at such a young age.
Even when I was showing the 1 year, I still had no clue what was going on the entire time.
Couple more coming back into the show ring for our final group of crossbred steers. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in. If you want to Let us know who you're cheering on or wish someone congratulations. Drop a note in the chat box on either Facebook or YouTube. Appreciate all of you tuning in throughout the Custer County Fair. Glad to be here bringing you the video broadcast. Thanks for tuning in, Tammy. Tammy saying proud of the Guthrie kids from Callaway, from Grandma Tammy. And we'll come around here to the near side of the show ring. Thank you to Full Circle Irrigation with locations in Broken Bow and Litchfield. You can contact Todd Wardeen at their office in Litchfield or Broken Bow for all of your irrigation parts, technology, and service needs. They are your local Valley dealer. You can catch Todd in one of two places, basketball official, or you can catch him out helping people out as a part of Full Circle Irrigation. I know he enjoys both things a lot. Cadence, I know you're getting ready for volleyball season. How was your second day of conditioning?
Yes, it was the second day of conditioning.
Harder, easier?
It was a little easier. Our head coach wasn't there, so I think maybe they went a little bit easier on us. Also, we didn't have the pre-conditioning weights in the morning, so that was nice.
Okay.
And then in the middle of our conditioning, we had to do our concussion testing, so.
Oh, so even more of a break.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you play basketball as well?
Yes.
Do you condition just as much for basketball and volleyball, or?
Basketball is a different type of conditioning. Volleyball, we do a lot of jumping. We do some like footwork stuff. For basketball, it's just a lot of running.
Just extended amounts of running time.
Yes, which
understandable.
I prefer basketball conditioning more because I'm a long distance runner. So, running is fine for me, but when we get to the quick little footwork stuff, I'm not a big fan of that.
Now, you're a long-distance runner, but are you one of those long-distance runners that enjoys running? Like, do you get enjoyment out of running long distances?
No.
No, but you do it.
Yeah,
okay.
I just do it because that's the only thing that I found that I was good at in track, so.
There's levels to being a long-distance runner, and pretty much 3 levels. There's I'm good at it and I don't enjoy doing it. I'm good at it and I enjoy doing it. And I'm good at it and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I've not ever been any of those. I'm not good at it and I don't enjoy it.
Well, it's not for everyone.
We've had 3 pulled to the top of the show ring, as you see them at the top of your screen there. That means we're down to our top 5 in this group, number 3 of crossbred steers this afternoon. And now down to our top 4 there at the bottom of your screen. After crossbred steers, we'll go to Black Angus steers. No surprise here. The area of Nebraska and central United States we've got 4 groups of Black Angus steers. and then bred and fed steers, 2 groups of that. We will then determine an overall champion in market beef and an overall reserve champion in market beef. That will bring back each champion and reserve champion from all of the groups to this point in the market beef division. That is easily one of my favorite things in the beef show. Besides, of course, the overall showmanship, which took place earlier on this morning. After that, we'll have the champion rate of gain and reserve rate of gain champions announced. And there will be club group of 5 market beef, which takes place as well. And that will round out the 4-H beef show today. And of course, at 3 o'clock, the plan is to transition to the FFA side of things. 2 young men left at the bottom of your screen with their crossbreed steers. And if I'm noticing right, I think that Burke Blakeman will be first in this class. And the other young man will come in second. And we'll hear from the judge.
A good class of crossbred steers here as we get into the heavyweight division of these steers. And I think it's safe to say that in terms of finish, everybody in this class is pretty close to having enough, if not enough already. But the Brockle steer is going to win this class. And I think maybe one that you don't necessarily gravitate towards right from the beginning, maybe doesn't hit you as hard in terms of just an eye appeal standpoint. But I think one that when you start to study them and really break them down in terms of good, functional, practical type of cattle, this steer finds his way to the top. I think he's one that gets out and goes with ease for this stage of the game. He's got the correct amount of finish. He's still fresh. He's certainly one that has plenty of muscle shape and dimension. He's soft-made. Just a nice practical steer to start the class. The kind of gold steer that's going to come next, one that I like a lot in terms of just length and spine. I think he too is a really functional design type of steer. He's got some depth of body. He maybe wants to slope a little bit downhill when you kind of start to study him from a side profile. Maybe not quite as expressive, muscled through his hip there is the one that wins the class, but a nice steer in second as well. The young man's black steer that comes third. From a style and balance standpoint, this steer is one that I like a lot. I think you can safely say that he is the most attractive steer of the class. The fit job is really good. He's very highly presented. I think one that has some hip to him. He's maybe just one that's a little bit more shallow through the center third of his body. And honestly, when you get your hands on him, that one is the farthest from being at a correct amount of finish standpoint of any in this class, but still a well-designed steer. Young lady's steer that comes next, a really good practical steer as well. He's got some foot and bone underneath him. He's one that's got some depth of body. Sure enough, has the correct amount of finish, and a nice steer there for her. The Brockle face steer that comes after that, one that maybe gets a little bit longer toed, but I think he's one that's still moving pretty well. He's maybe not just quite as robust and expressive over the top side of his skeleton as a few of those others that stand above him, but certainly a practical, easy feeding type steer there for him. The young man's black steer that's going to come next. This is probably one of the stoutest featured steers of the class. With that, I think he is probably the furthest along in terms of his fat cover. I think his prime was probably a couple weeks ago. He's one that's starting to get a little bit stale, just not quite as fresh. Brockle face steer that comes next, I would just like to free this steer up when you set him into motion. I think he's one that's starting to struggle a little bit off those rear two. Give him just a little more flex and a little more softness, but a nice big frame steer that's going to hang plenty of pounds of product. Kind of the same story with this steer that's going to come round out the class. I think one that's getting a little bit long-toed, maybe just doesn't get out and move as well as a few of the others in the class, but one that does have some muscle. He's certainly going to hang plenty of pounds of product on the rails, so a nice project for her as well.
If I'm reading right, that would be, that group held the largest steer of the day, 1,620 pounds. Nothing like parading something around a show ring that outweighs you by 1,500 pounds, right?
Oh, yeah. I feel bad for like the little kids trying to haul around these huge cows, and
especially when they don't listen. It's it's one thing when they listen well. It's another thing when they just really don't want to listen.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating. My calf, the one year that I did it, right before I was supposed to, take him to go wash him off, he bolted into the trees, and I had to go chase him down, and it was just not a great experience.
So here come all of I believe this will be the top 2 from the 3 groups of crossbred steers.
Caden Miller, Brexton Austrian, Taryn Blakeman, Creighton Cook. Blues go to Ashton Bemerwald, Burke Blakeman, and Brecken Doggett.
I think we had an extra steer end up in the show ring that's not supposed to be in there. Just wanted to show off so badly. So we've got the top 3 out here, so I was incorrect. It's the top 3 that will have a chance at being the champion crossbred steer. And then whichever of them becomes the champion, they will bring in the second place winner from that same steers group to have a chance at winning reserve. So again, out there right now from group number 3 is Burke Blakeman. From group number 2 is Allie Smith. Oh, and here come the other. Oh, I was right. Cadence. They're going to bring all 6 in. So, total. Jalen Young, Jackson Guthrie, Allie Smith, Emma Stahlbaumer, Burke Blakeman, and Caden Miller.
Your champion reserve crossbred steers. 6 nice steers out here. A young man steer from the first class. I think one that, as we talked in class, does have some natural power and muscle shape to him. He's pretty wide when you study him in terms of his chest floor and stepping behind him. He maybe needs just a touch more feed to him to be at a proper finish, but a nice practical steer there from the first class. Young lady steer there from that second class, one that I like quite a lot. I think he's one that really gives you a nice look from the side. He's soft-made. When you set this one into motion, he gets out and moves really well. He's really fresh. I think just a really nice kind of steer there from that second class. As we just got done talking, the young man steer from this third class, I think one that for the amount of weight he's at, he still moves really well. He's extremely functional. He's pretty shapely across the top side of his skeleton. I think you step in behind this one and you're impressed with how much muscle and mass he really does have. He's maybe not the most attractive one out here in the drive, but I think just a really good, fundamentally good type steer there from that class. The young lady's second place steer from that first class, one that's really long-sided. I would like to see him with just a shot more depth. I think he's one that maybe doesn't balance up quite as well as a couple of the other steers out here, but certainly a nice steer for her. The gold steer from the second class, one that's a little bit more moderate in his frame size, I think. But certainly you step in behind this one and you're really impressed, as he is probably one of the stoutest featured steers out here. I think he's really expressively muscled, especially right in through his loin there. I think just a nice soft-made steer. As we talked in class, he maybe didn't balance up quite as well as that one that won this particular class, but a nice steer there as well. The young man's big gold steer here from that last class, one that's long-sided. He's really good in the amount of finish. He's fresh, has some muscle shape, but I guess it kind of comes down to a nice pair of steers for me. I'll go out and I'll show you the 2 I like, but let's give them a big round of applause.
So your champion crossbred steer is going to be Allie Smith. And your reserve is also going to be from that first group. Excuse me, from group number 2. That would be Emma Stahlbaumer. So Allie Smith and Emma Stahlbaumer have the champion and reserve champion crossbred steer, both coming out of the same
As the
group.
crossbred steers lead the Custer County Farm Bureau Survey, we'd like to thank our game sponsors, Angela Madison Memorial for the champion crossbred steer event, and we'd like to thank the Scott Reynolds family for the reserve crossbred steer event. Thank you, sponsors.
So that will bring us to Black Angus steers. If Cadence, I could ask you to read those top 2 sponsors there, a couple more of our purple ribbon sponsors while I kind of get ready for our next set here.
All right, so our purple ribbon sponsor, Custer Public Power District, keeping your lights shining bright. Nebraska is still the only state in the U.S. that is served 100% by public power. Custer Public Power, proudly serving the Custer County community, locally owned and governed by you. And then our next purple ribbon sponsor is Agri Affiliates, established in 1985. Agri Affiliates Inc. is employee-owned and headquarters at North Platte and offices in Kearney, Hastings, Arnold, and McCook, and soon will have an office in Broken Bow, providing quality details, real estate appraisals, modern sophisticated property management, and the highest level of real estate sales. Thank you to our purple ribbon sponsors.
Perfect, thank you very much. And you folks are seeing group number 1 of Black Angus steers come into the show ring. In this group, Elliot Spanel, Trey Connell, Camden Coleman, Haley Coleman, Grace Cantrell, and Brecken Reinerson. Again, these Black Angus steers in the first group. The smallest of the groups, 1,024 to 1,292 pounds. I think by asking too many questions about your conditioning workouts, Cadence, I might have earned you some extra work tomorrow.
Oh,
I
man.
apologize. Lindsay Kolhanek in the comment section, I'm guessing commenting on what we were talking about it being easier without your head coach there, so you might be in trouble.
Oops.
For conditioning, do people still run ladders? Is that's still a thing? It's been like a thing for decades.
Yeah, we call them suicides.
Okay.
And we haven't done too many for volleyball. They're more for basketball, I'd say.
Sure.
But yeah, we do them every so often.
Not to give your coaches ideas on conditioning drills or anything, but we used to do a conditioning drill called Team Gold. It was a team conditioning drill where you ran entire lengths of the floor, baseline to baseline, and you had a certain amount of time on the clock for the amount of times you were supposed to run up and down the baseline. For each person who didn't reach the baseline and finish the last length they were supposed to, you got -1 point. You got +1 point for each person that not only reached the baseline for the final length, but then got back out to the free throw line on that side of the floor. So you start by running down and back, then you do 4 lengths with a little bit more time. You do 6 lengths, then 8, 10, 12, 14, then 16. And then when you're at that point, if your team is not at positive points by the time you've done the 16 lengths of the floor, they knock 3 seconds off of the time for each set that you do, and you go back down 14, 12, 10, 8, all the way down to 2. When you get there, if you're not positive, guess what? Another 3 seconds comes off the clock, and you got to do each of those sets even 3 seconds faster. And you continue to do it until your team has a positive score. So you're getting more tired, but also you're afforded less time each time. So yeah, it's in your best interest to do well at the beginning. Otherwise, it gets really, really bad. So,
Coach Kahanic, you did not hear that.
yeah, you're hoping she was tuned out by then, huh? Again, this is group number 1 of Black Angus steers, 1,024 to 1,292 pounds. Represented are Ansley Junior Livestock, the Tail Twisters, Four Corners, and Sandhill Critters. And it looks like second out of this group is going to be Grace Cantrell, and first is going to be Camden Coleman.
Start off into the Angus steer division, maybe one that doesn't necessarily jump out at you right away, but I think the young man steer is the most expressively muscled steer of the class. I think he does have the most amount of shape over his loin and into his ribeye, and he's got a good amount of finish on him. I think when you study them at the ground, this is one that reads with just a little bit of more true width. I think he's a little bit more pulled apart in his chest floor, maybe gets out and goes just a little better than that steer that's going to be second. This steer in second is a little bit deeper sided. I think one that does have a good amount of finish on him. He's maybe just getting a little bit longer toed, doesn't get out and stride quite as well as the one that wins this particular class, but still a good practical type steer there in second. The young man steer that's going to come next, a little bit taller frame type of steer. I think one that does have some foot and bone underneath him. He just needs a little bit more fat cover on him. I think he's one that's a few days away from being at a finishing standpoint. You would like to just kind of soften him up there through the center portion of his body as well. Kind of the same story with this steer that's going to come next. I think one that's got some length of spine. He maybe has just a touch more depth of body than that steer that stands right up ahead of him, but I think one that just gets a little bit more flat when you step in behind him, not as expressively muscled as those steers standing ahead of him. Young man steer that's going to come next, I think, one that gets out and goes pretty easily, but I would like to kind of just level him out from hooks to pins. I think he wants to slope out of his hip, gets a little bit more shallow gutted in comparison to those steers standing ahead of him, and then needs a little bit more time on feet as well. Young man steer that's going to round out the class, certainly one that's long-sided. He's athletic. As you set him into motion, he just needs a little bit more frame to him, a little bit more time on feed to get any higher today, but good class of Angus steers.
Okay, so that is the end of Group 1 in Black Angus steers. That means we'll go to Group 2. We'll up the weight a little bit, 1,294 to 1,358 pounds. Competing in Group 2
second call
is Addison Dalrymple, Cameron Eberly, Slayton Cook, Keelan Shea, Jack Bartok, and Evelyn Vara. Tail Twisters, Sandhills Critters, and Four Corners all represented in this group coming into the arena. So Camden Coleman, the lone purple from that group number 1, as we're hearing that announced as group number 2 comes in. A group of 6 in the program, and we see a group of 6 out there, so our numbers are checking out. Hope everybody had fun last night at the Free Pit Barbecue. I think I myself handed out, over a dozen boxes of dilly bars. I think there's 6 or 8 to a box. I was talking to Brent with Lines Appliance. He said that there were over 1,500 dilly bars by his estimation. Custer County Bull Riding Classic. Tough night of bull riding for those Cowboys. Only had 4 rides that were taken into the short go, and nobody was able to complete an 8-second ride in the short go. Brent has a story up about the competition on the sports page of sandhillsexpress.com if you want to go and check that out. Speaking of entertainment, there's going to be more entertainment going on tonight. The Ultimate Bullfighters freestyle bullfighting. Have you ever seen that, Cadence?
No, I have not.
It's pretty crazy. They don't even mess with putting anybody on the back of the bull anymore. What they do is they have the bullfighter out in the middle of the arena, and then they just let the bull out of the chute. And the idea is for these bullfighters to get the bull to charge at them, and they get more points the closer they are to the bull, or the tricks that they do around the bull. In years past, I have seen one gentleman did a front flip over a bull. He ran straight at it across the arena, jumped in the air and did a front flip with his head just over the back of the bull.
Wow.
Another year, they're able to use the barrel if they want. Another year, a guy got a bull to charge at him, and he ended up using the barrel to be in between him and the bull. And he took his cowboy hat off, reached across the very angry bull, and put the hat on the bull, staring at him right in the face. So, be an entertaining night if you folks want to go and check that out tonight. 7:30 is the start time for the freestyle bullfights at the Trotter Arena here on the Custer County Fairgrounds. Wednesday nights, the teen dance, that's at 9 p.m. And don't forget about the 4-H awards presentation. That's also going on tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Our streaming schedule for tomorrow starts with the FFA Stalker Feeder Show starting at 8 a.m. That will be followed by the 4-H Stalker Feeder Show. At 9 o'clock is the 4-H Breeding Heifers, followed by the Clover Kid Bucket Calf Parade. That's always one of the favorites. Is it called Clover Kids in Sherman County as well?
Yeah.
Clover
yeah.
Kids.
Clover Kids.
And Junior Herd and Best Group of 3 Beef as well, all to follow in that 9 o'clock time slot. 11 o'clock, the 4-H and FFA Beef Fitting and Showing Contest. I was talking to Grant earlier today. We might get a little bit fancy with our new remote camera capabilities and battery capabilities. Have him walk around, or if Cadence is around, have them walk around and do some mobile camera work. That's an awesome competition to check out. You get to see how all of these kids in these 4-H groups work together to fit and show their cattle. That's going on at 11 tomorrow. The 4-H Dairy Cattle Show happening at the same time as the 4-H Goat Show. There will be the goat arena, and then the dairy cattle will be happening on the other side of the arena. The FFA Goat Show will follow the 4-H Goat Show, and then FFA Dairy Cattle scheduled to start at 3 o'clock. Then on Thursday, as we mentioned before, don't forget, we will be broadcasting on video for the first time the 4-H and FFA livestock sale at 7 p.m. As always, you will be able to hear the audio of that on KCNI Pure Country as well. So it looks like Addison Dalrymple is going to receive a purple in this group. I made the mistake with the last, with a couple of groups so far today, assuming that the top 2 always get a purple. Not always the case, but I believe the top from each group does get a purple at the very least. So Addison Dalrymple comes in first with her Black Angus steer. Coming in second in this group is Jack Bartok.
I think there's there's one in here that wins this class pretty easily, and that's being the young ladies steer out in the front. I think this one just combines a lot of good. You study this one from the ground up, and he's awfully good. I think he's one that sets out into motion. He gets out and moves with a really big athletic stride. He's smooth in terms of the angle of his hock. He's got a good set to his passer, and I think just a really good fundamentally designed steer there. He gives you an added look from the side. I think he's probably one of the stouter feature steers out here. He's really good in the amount of fat cover he's got on him, and he is the deepest bodied steer. So just a really complete made nice steer to win the class. Maybe gets a little bit more challenging after you get him out of the picture, but the young man steer that's going to come second, I think one that does have just a touch more shape right out of the top side of his blade. He is one that has a good amount of finish on him. I think he's one that's pretty fresh. He's got a good amount of cover on his 12th and 13th. He's maybe not as attractive as this one that wins the class, but a practical steer there in second. Kind of the similar story with the young man steer that's going to come next. I think one that's long-bodied. He gets out and goes relatively well. He's maybe just not quite as expressively muscled, doesn't have quite as much shape over the top side of his skeleton as the two ahead of him, but still a nice steer. The kind of brown tinge steer that's going to come next, I think one that has some length of body, and he is probably one of the biggest hip steers in this particular class. But with that being said, he is one that's a little bit shallower gutted, maybe just needs a little more softness there as well. The steer that comes next for this young man, I think one that maybe wants to run downhill a little bit. He's a little bit shallower gutted. You'd like to just soften him up and give him a shot more depth of body, but a nice steer as well. Young lady steer that rounds out the class, I think one that does have a good amount of cover on him. He certainly is finished, but with that being said, I think he is the flattest muscled steer out here. I'd like to just change him in the way he's designed from his hip. I think he kind of slopes out of his hip from hooks to pins, but nice class of Angus steers there.
In Group 2, Black Angus steers. Purples go to Addison Dalrymple, Cameron Eberly, Jack Bartok. Blues go to Evelyn Vera, Slayton Cook, and Keelan Shea. Second call, Black Angus.
Group number 3 coming across your screen right now. Black Angus steers between 1,400 and 1,464 pounds. Emma Larson, Colt Christensen, Traven Larson, Kaylee Cook, Easton Spanel, Callie Nelson, Oren Grint, and Olivia Ostrand. All out there for group number 3 of 5 Black Angus steers. Of 4, excuse me. Thank you to A1 Auto Repair in Arnold, the trusted name in auto repair and maintenance services for families across our area. They offer a wide variety of services that your vehicle needs to thrive. Make sure to visit them at their new location in Arnold at 110 East 7th Avenue, or give them a call at 308-848-2542 to make an appointment. Good crowd continues to be on hand here for 4-H Beef Show. Started at 8 a.m. this morning. I'd say we kind of topped out on our crowd size right towards the end of the showmanship side of things, but pretty consistent crowd. Stands are pretty full and about shoulder to shoulder all the way around the show ring here today as well, almost for the entirety of the day, besides about maybe that first hour or so. showing up at 6:30 didn't even get me the front parking spot today, Cadence. That's how you know there's a lot of dedication to the folks that not only are helping out with these animals directly, but the folks that are supporting these kids as well.
Oh yeah, like when I get here, when I pull up, I just take the first parking spot that I can see, because I'm always scared that if I go too far out there, there's not going to be a parking spot left. So
yeah, that's kind of what you got to do. You just kind of got to assume there's not going to be anything closer. Group of 8 out there and a group of 8 listed in the program. So our numbers are all right. Judge pulling one steer forward already. Second steer pulled up is Traven Larson. Next steer, Oren Grant. Just like that, we're down to our top 3. They're in the middle right-hand part of your screen. The 2 left behind here, Callie Nelson, and the young lady on the right-hand part of your screen, that would be Olivia Ostrand.
Here in the heavier weight class. The young lady's kind of haired up steer is going to win this class, and I think when you start to study this one from a style and balance standpoint, it gives you a pretty good look from the side. He is the softest made steer of the class. I think he's the deepest bodied. He is one of the wider top steers as well. If I'm going to change him, I would just give him just a little bit more flex off of both ends. I think he's maybe just a little bit short-strided, but a really nice steer to start the class off. Young lady steer that's going to come second, really long-sided steer. I like this one in terms of his hip and hind end. I think he's one that has some shape and some power to him. He is one that handles really fresh. He's maybe not quite as attractive from a style standpoint as that one that wins the class, but a really functional and good type of steer there in second. Young man steer that's going to come third. Another one that is really fresh in terms of his handle. I think he's one that's pretty good, and kind of at a 12 o'clock, he's ready to roll, hang a nice carcass. He is one that's really shapely. I think he's got plenty of curvature to his rib. He's got some depth of body. He's maybe just not quite as long spined as the steers ahead of him, but a really nice one there as well. Young lady steer that comes fourth just gets a little bit more plain in his design. I think he's got some muscle and maybe doesn't have just kind of the look and eye appeal of the 3 steers ahead of him. The next steer, I think one that's long-sided. He has some shape to him. I would just like to give him a shot more depth of body. I think he's one that just gets a little bit harder doing through the center there. The next 3 steers, I think, all have some hoof issues and some structural problems. The steer that's going to come out of here next, I think, one that you would like to change his hoof shape. He's getting awfully long-toed. He maybe just doesn't get out and go quite as well as the steers ahead of him, but he does have more power than the next 2. The young man's next steer, again, pretty long-toed type of steer, just doesn't have quite as much power and dimension as well. And then the young lady steer that rounds out the class, Some long toes there as well, but I think when it comes down to it, he is probably the flattest design steer when you step in behind him, and reads with the least amount of muscle, but certainly one that has some finish on him is going to hang a nice carcass for her as well.
Okay, so we will listen for the names of who received purple in that group, but we do know that Callie Nelson placed first in that group and Olivia Austrian placed second. Group number 4 are going to be coming onto your screen here shortly. Brexton Ostrand, Shaylee Coleman, Emmett Palmer, Taryn Blakeman, Owen Cantrell, Olivia Doggett, and Caden Goodman. This will be the last group of Black Angus steers. Then we just have bred and fed steers before we bring the tops in all of the market beef divisions back to determine our overall champion and reserve champion.
Go to Callie Nelson, Olivia Austrian, Colt Christensen. Blues go to Kaylee Cook, Orrin Grint, Easton Sponel, Traven Larson, and Emma Larson.
Again, you see the judge kind of getting her hands on a couple of these steers, giving a good feel for everything. She'll lead them around, have them lead around to the front half of the show ring here. First pulled up is Owen Cantrell. Following him will be Caden Goodman. And then Olivia Doggett. Shaylee Coleman are the first four pulled up. Okay, your top three are on your screen there. We'll just kind of see what order they fall into. Last couple, she's just kind of pointed. Normally gives us kind of the 3, 2, 1 sort of indication, but she's kind of started vocalizing it only. So we'll see what order we fall into here. Coming in third is going to be Emmett Palmer.
Here, I think obviously all of them are to a finish standpoint. So with that being said, the young man steer that's going to win the class, I do think is the freshest one out here. I think when you get him on a profile, he gives you probably the best look of any other steer out here, and you set him into motion and this one gets out and goes. I think he's just kind of the combination steer, maybe not just overwhelmingly deep, but I think one that is fresh and plenty good in his own right. A nice pair here that's in second and third. The young lady steer that's going to go second, I think one that just has just a touch more shape to him, especially right out the top side of his shoulder. I think he does balance up just a notch better. Maybe is a little bit stronger topped right in behind his shoulder. He's maybe carrying just a little bit extra, to be honest, but I think one that still gives you kind of that soft-made, easy-feeding type of look for her. The young man steer that's going to come third, one that has some power and dimension when you step in behind him. He's good in the amount of finish he has. He maybe just wants to break right in behind his shoulder in comparison to those two steers ahead, but certainly a nice steer for him as well. The kind of brownish tinged steer that comes fourth, I think one that's got some frame to him. He's got some length of body. He gets out and goes relatively well. He maybe just is a little bit more plain in terms of his design, gets a little bit heavier chested when you compare him to those steers ahead of him, but a nice practical steer there for her. The next two steers here, I think both could be freshened up and maybe kind of wheeled back just a little bit, I'm guessing. Their best time was a few weeks ago. Young lady steer, I think, does have some natural muscle shape and dimension. He is pretty pulled apart and wide when he comes at you. But with that being said, he is a little more stale. I think he's a little bit past the prime. You'd like to kind of free him up when you set him into motion as well. The young man steer that comes next, the furthest along in terms of fat cover. This one just gets a little bit excessive for me, but a nice steer. And then the one that's going to round out the class, one that does have some length of spine. He gets out and goes pretty well. He's maybe just a little bit more flat, wants to round out of his hip a little bit when you compare him to the steers ahead of him. But nice class of Angus steers. Let's give them a round of applause.
So that again was Group 4 of Black Angus steers, and then we will have all of the best from all four groups of Black Angus steers come back out, and we will find out who our champion and reserve champion are in Black Angus steers. Again, as I have them written down, Brexton Ostrand in first, Taryn Blakeman in second, and Emmett Palmer in third in that group. We'll go ahead and hear which are purples.
In Group 4, Black Angus steers, purples go to Brexton Ostrand, Taryn Blakeman, Emmett Palmer. Blues go to Shaylee Coleman, Olivia Doggett, Caden Goodman, and Owen Cantrell. Black Angus
Okay, so as expected, we will have the tops from all of the groups of Black Angus steers come back in, and they will all compete for champion and reserve champion. Stick around, we're getting close to the end of the market beef division for 4-H. Bred and fed steers coming up next. Two groups there. First group tops out at 1,324 pounds. Second group tops out at 1,486 pounds. We'll have a champion in that division as well, and then we will crown our overall champion in market beef and our overall reserve market beef. So coming back in will be Camden Coleman, Addison Dalrymple, Callie Nelson, and then from the last group, Brexton Ostrand. The four top purple ribbon winners in the four groups. What's up with the sudden burst of sun? Did you notice that, Cadence?
Yeah, I did.
What happened? Is that I think that's the first break from cloud cover we've had today. It's going to play out just like yesterday, isn't it? It's going to hit 2 o'clock, about 2:30, and it's just going to get smoking hot out here. I can just have a feeling. Although high only called for 81.
Well, I hope we keep this breeze. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, the breeze is great.
Here we are going to pick a top 5, so if you kind of bear with us, we'll pick, and then they'll pull seconds and down through each class as we go. But I'm just going to go ahead and talk the class winners, and then we'll just kind of pick from there. But young man steer from the first class, I think obviously, as you can tell, one that just needs a little bit more time on feed, but I think fundamentally this steer is a pretty good one. He gets out and goes. He's got some depth of body. He's maybe not the most attractive steer out here, but a pretty good, just practical type of steer from that first class. Young lady steer that comes out of the second class, in terms of one that gets out and goes, I think this is one of the best structured steers we've seen walk through here today. He's really elegant when you set him in motion. I think he's one that ties really smoothly into his shoulder. He ties high into his head and his neck. Gives you a really good look from the side. You can add that up with him being really fresh and having some depth of body. That's an awfully good one there in the second hole. Young lady steer from the third class, I think, kind of follows that steer in terms of type and kind of the one that's standing right in front of her. I think he's one that's pretty robust. He's got some depth of body. He's certainly one that's fresh, gives you a pretty nice look from the side. He's maybe a little bit heavier fronted in comparison to that steer standing right above it or right in front of him. Gets a little bit heavier chested there, maybe a little bit more waisty, but a nice steer in the third hole as well. Young man steer from that fourth class, I think one that, as we talked in class, he does carry that weight pretty well. I think he was the freshest one in the class. He gets out and goes with plenty of ease when you set him into motion. He's maybe not as attractive as a couple of the other steers standing right ahead of him, but a really good practical steer as well. So we've got some seconds out here. We've talked them in class as well, but I'm going to go ahead. I'll show you the one that I like, and then we'll go down through 5. But let's give all these kids a round of applause on a nice group of Angus steers.
Okay, so she's going to go over and shake the hand of the champion in Black Angus steers. And it looks like that is going to be Addison Dalrymple. So she is going to have your champion Black Angus steer. Then we'll have the choice of reserve. Again, judge right under that Rocks Underground, now the Agland ATV logo on your screen. And reserve champion is going to be out of group number 3. That would be Callie Nelson. And they're going to line them up 1st through 5th along the top there. Again, on the right is Addison Dalrymple. To the left is Callie Nelson, your champion and reserve champion, Black Angus steer. This young man coming up next, I believe, was Brexton Ostrand. He will get 3rd. Fourth is going to go to Olivia Ostrand. And 5th, going to come on the bottom of your screen, just being congratulated now, is going to be Taryn Blakeman. So congratulations to Addison Dalrymple and Callie Nelson. They are your champion and your reserve champion, respectively, here in Black Angus steers. Cadence, if you would, just choose a couple more sponsors on that sheet there, and I'll kind of get us set for our bred and fed steers.
All right, so another one of our Purple Ribbon sponsors is Pearson Physical Therapy. Stop into Pearson Physical Therapy in Broken Bow for the treatment you need, the care you deserve. Don't let pain stop you in your tracks. Make an appointment for a free assessment to help you get on the road to recovery. Call 308-872-5803 for your appointment today. Another one of our Purple Ribbon sponsors is Nebraska State Bank. Nebraska State Bank is proud to be your local bank, serving the area since 1918. With 4 convenient locations in Callaway, Myrna, and Broken Bow, they have your financial service needs covered. Stop by any location today to get set up with free checking for your personal or business needs. Thank you to our Purple Ribbon sponsors.
All right, thank you, Cadence. Again, if you're just joining us, champion Black Angus steer was just named, shown by Addison Dalrymple. Reserve Black Angus steer is shown by Callie Nelson. That moves us to bred and fed steers, 976 to 1,324 pounds. 2 groups here. Both groups of 8, 16 total steers being shown. After that, we'll bring back the best from each group, have our champion and reserve in bred and fed steer, and then what I'm most excited for, you get to see all of the different groups compete against each other for best of market beef in 4-H. Really excited for that. Let's do a little bit of a recap. Our day started with showmanship, of course. Senior showmanship. Abby Stahlbomber winning that for the 2nd year in a row. Abby also won the overall Grand Champion Beef Showman, but it was announced that since she had won last year, she cannot represent the beef category in elite showmanship up against all of the other animals for elite showmanship 2 years in a row. So the reserve champion from the senior showmanship and reserve champion overall, Mahia Jones, will represent beef in the elite showmanship show instead. In junior beef showmanship, Addison Dalrymple was your champion. Your reserve champion was Callie Nelson. Much like we just had there in Black Angus steers, Addison Dalrymple was the champion, reserve champion to Callie Nelson. In pre-junior beef showmanship, it was Burke Blakeman coming in as your champion, and Taylin Tobias was the reserve champion in pre-junior showmanship. Again, your overall grand champion beef showman was Abby Stahlbomber. Mahia Jones was the overall reserve champion. We then went to market heifers. Taylin Tobias had the champion market heifer Your reserve champion was Charlie Pandorf. Trip Oxford in Shorthorn Steers was your champion. Your reserve champion Shorthorn Steer was shown by Laney Palmer. In the Hereford Steers category, Casey Nelson was your champion. Emma Stahlbomber was your reserve champion. In Red Angus Steers, Quaid Smith the champion. Your reserve champion was Kazan Kaufman-Smith. Cade Smith in Simmental Steers was your champion. Regan Fleece was your reserve Simmental steer today. Charlet Steers was next. Reagan Babcock showing the champion Charlet steer. The reserve Charlet steer was shown by Cordell Kristen. Crossbred steers were next. 3 groups there. Great competition. Allie Smith came out on top showing the champion crossbred steer. Emma Stahlbomber was your reserve champion crossbred steer today. And then just most recently, the champion Black Angus steer was shown by Addison Dalrymple, and the reserve champion Black Angus steer was shown by Callie Nelson. That brings us to where we are now, group number 1 of 2 in bred and fed steers. Eight listed in the program and 8 out there in the show ring, so we are on schedule as far as that is concerned. Pulled up second is Keely Pelster. Also seen pulled up is Trell Pelster. Madison Barker pulled up next. And then after that is Blake Slocum. That quickly brings us to our top 3 here. Quinn Rosentrader, McKenna Weinman, both out there. And the third in the top 3 would be Brennan Barron. It's now between Brennan and McKenna Weinman. And Brennan Barron going to come out on top.
Touch more finish on him. He's maybe not the most finished steer out here, but I think when it comes down to it, he's one of the better ones at the ground. I like the shape to his foot. I think he's one that's pretty stout when he's stepping behind him. He's a little bit deeper bodied, and I think he is one of the more attractive steers up through that front 1/3 of his body. So a nice place to start the class. The young lady steer that's going to come second, I think one that does have some natural muscle shape and expression to him. He's just maybe not quite as attractive, gets a little bit more plain, doesn't balance up quite as well as this one that's going to win the class, but a nice steer there in second as well. The steer that's going to come third, I think one that's got some length of body. He's moderate, gives you kind of an easy feeding type of look. He's got a good amount of cover on him. He's just maybe not quite as stout featured as those two steers ahead of him. Maybe gets a little bit more base narrow when you study him at the ground, but a nice steer there in third. The young man's kind of brockle-faced steer that's going to come fourth. I think one that's got some length of body. He does have some muscle and expression. I would just like to change him in the shape of his hoof. He's kind of one that gets a little bit long-toed. I don't think one that just gets out and moves quite as well as those steers ahead of him. From there, the young lady steer, one that does give you a pretty nice look. He probably is the more stylish steer of this class, kind of gives you just a little bit more of a show ring type of presence about him. However, he is one of the flatter muscled steers, and I think he just does gets too hard there through the center third of his body. I'd just like to soften him up and drop him down there in terms of his depth of rib. The next three steers, I think they all three need some more muscle, some more mass, maybe a little bit more frame and just a lot more time on feet. But the young lady steer that comes next gets out and goes really well. He's a very sound structured steer, just needs to be more of him. Same with the young man steer. He's maybe just a tick longer toed. I don't think he's quite as soft through the center third of his body as the one standing right above him. Definitely just needs a little more time. And the young lady steer that rounds out the class, one that's pretty small in terms of frame size for my preference. I just like to kind of size him up and just give him more muscle and more overall to him. But a nice project for them, and congratulations to all of these kids.
So first
As an announcement after Group 2.
First in that group is Brennan Barron and then McKenna Weinman in second, and they're just making the announcement that after the second group, after the champion and reserve champion of bred and fed steer are chosen, they'll have a 10-minute break before we come out and have the overall champion and overall reserve champion in market beef chosen here today.
Brennan Barron, McKenna Weinman, Quinn Rosentrader. Blues go to Blake Slocum, Madison Barker, Keely Pelster, Trell Pelster, and KZ Pelster.
In comes group number 2 of bred and fed steers. Maggie Peterson and Hayden Christian, both representing Sand Hill Critters. Macy Setta, representing Four Corners. Kate Barron of Middle Loop 4-H. Emerson Palmer of Sand Hill Critters. Riley Barron of Middle Loop 4-H. And then Delaney Weinman and Bree Blowers, both of Tail Twisters, to round out your group. Again, this is group number 2 of bred and fed steers. Weight ranges between 1,330 and 1,486 pounds. Bree Blowers handling that 1,486 pound steer this afternoon. That thing's a little helter-skelter here. One person was heading up to stand in line, wanted to be pulled back by the judge. Hayden Kristen getting back in line. Pulled up next is Emerson Palmer in 4th place. That leaves us with our top 3 along the bottom of your screen right now. Again, this is group number 2 of bred and fed steers. I believe that's Riley Barron in the middle. Going up to be in 3rd is Delaney Weinman. And the judge is running over to that microphone. We'll hear from her here in a second.
Another interesting class to sort through in some terms of just differences in type and kind. The young ladies black steer is going to win the class, and I think he is the freshest steer of this particular drive. He's got a good amount of finish over his 12th and 13th, and he is one that's expressive over his loin. I think when you read him out the top side of his shoulder, he comes out the widest and carries that width all the way down from hooks to pins and then to the ground. And he gets out and moves relatively well, so a nice kind of functional place to start the class. The young lady's orange steer that's going to be second, I think definitely one that could use some more time on feed, but in terms of just being a practical type of steer, I think this steer is one that's pretty good. He's pretty fresh, maybe not completely finished, but I think one that when you get him on the standstill, he gives you a pretty nice look. He's got some depth of body and some softness to him, so nice steer there. The young lady's black steer that's going to come third, a really long-sided steer, and I really like this one in terms of just how much flex he's got off of both ends. I think he's one that's pretty soft. When you set him into motion, study him at the ground, he's got some fat cover and finish on him. He's just maybe a little bit more plain in terms of his design and comparing him to those 2 steers ahead of him, but one that's awfully good there as well. The big steer that's going to come fourth, one that's maybe just starting to push a little excess fat. I would say that his best days were probably a couple weeks ago, and I think that shows when you get your hands on him. He's not as fresh. He's starting to get a little more stale when you compare him to those steers ahead of him, but certainly one that's going to hang some pounds on the rail. The young lady's steer that comes next, long-sided, kind of big frame type of steer, maybe doesn't get out and move with as much ease as you'd like him to. I think he's pretty straight at the point of his shoulder. I'd like to just give him a lot more angle and a lot more flexibility when you send him into motion, but certainly one that has some pounds of product and some muscle shape and expression in him. The next steer that comes out, the young lady's black steer, I think one that does have some freshness to him. He just maybe gets a little bit tighter there in his forward and his flank when you compare him to the steers ahead of him, but a nice steer for her. The gray steer that's going to come next, a long-sided steer. He's athletic when you set him into motion. He just needs a few more days on feed. I think he is maybe one that's just not as expressively shaped in terms of muscle when you compare him to steers ahead of him. Nice steer there. The Hereford steer that rounds out the class, I think one that you do like him from hooks to pins. I think he's one that reads with some dimension in that rear third. It's just kind of in the middle third there that he maybe gets a little more disappointing, a little more flat over the top side of his loin. Just needs a shot more depth of body, but nice class of bred and fed steers there for them.
Okay, so top out of that group number 2 of bred and fed steers was Riley Barron. We'll hear the purples.
Return bred and fed steers to the Custer County Farm Bureau show ring and announce a champion in reserve. We would like to thank our sponsors for the bred and fed steer champion banner, Matt and Jen Dalrymple, and our reserve bred and fed steer banner, 450 Ag LLC, care of Sandy Priest. In group 2 of the bred and fed steers, purples went to Riley Barron, Hayden Kristen, Delaney Weinman. Blues went to Emerson Palmer, Bree Blowers, Kate Barron, Macy Seta, and Maggie Peterson. Again, once a champion and reserve bred and fed steer are announced, we'll take a 10-minute break to line up all the overall champion and reserve market beef animals.
So the 4 entering the ring right now, lined up across your screen, include Brennan Barron, first place out of group number 1. First place out of group number 2, Riley Barron. Second place out of group number 1, which was McKenna Weinman. And second place out of group number 2, which was Hayden Kristen. They are all competing
4 nice steers out
for
here
champion
for your
and reserve.
bred and fed division. 4 just really practical type steers, maybe none that just necessarily catch your eye in terms of just being really overly eye appealing, but I think all of them have some muscle to them. They've all got some depth of body, they've got a good amount of finish. Structurally, they're all pretty decent. So just 4 really good functional type of steers out here. Young man steer from that first class, I think one that as we talked to him in class, he does have some width. When you study him across the top side of his skeleton, you step in behind him and he reads true to the ground, as he is one of the wider chested steers out here, and I think one that's pretty fresh in terms of just how much fat cover he's got on him today. He's got some depth of body. He's maybe not the longest sided steer. You'd maybe like to fix him right in behind the top side of his shoulder. He maybe wants to break right in his top line, just a notch, but a nice steer from the first class. The young lady steer that just won the second class, I think one that is awfully fresh as well. He gets out and goes pretty smooth. I think when you talk about a front end, this one probably has the smoothest front, the best shoulder of any out here in this particular drive, just one that's got some depth of body and muscle shape as well. The young lady's second place steer from the first class that is probably the stoutest featured steer out here. I think he's pretty big in terms of his foot and bone. He's got some depth of body. He's maybe just not as well balanced, maybe not as smooth made in terms of design when you compare him to the 2 steers that stand above or in front of him here, but a nice steer there as well. And then the gold steer from the second class, he's got some length of body, and I think probably one that does give you a little bit more of a show ring type of look. He maybe just doesn't have quite as much muscle shape and expression right in behind him when you step in behind him, but 4 nice steers. I'll go out and show you the 2 I like, but let's give these kids a big round of applause and bring in a project that they bred and brought out here.
So your champion is going to be Riley Barron. And your reserve will be Brennan Barron. And they were the first place winners out of each of their groups. So congratulations to Riley and Brennan. There will be a short break before they go into the next group. We'll just kind of stick with our tradition here, Cadence, if you want to read a couple more of our sponsor. I didn't mark the last couple that you...
Reserve bred and fed steer goes to Brennan Barron.
I hadn't marked off the couple that you had read before, so wherever you left off, go ahead.
All right. So another one of our Purple Ribbon sponsors is Trotter Service and Trotter Fertilizer. Trotter Service and Trotter Fertilizer and Broken Bow want to thank everyone for their business at all of their surrounding Trotter locations. Whether you are visiting Trotter Service, Trotter Fertilizer, or one of the many Trotters Woe and Goes, they have enjoyed serving you and Central Nebraska since 1962. Another one of our Purple Ribbon sponsors is Grocery Cart. The Grocery Cart in Broken Bow loves to help you with all your grocery needs at the lowest prices. Fresh groceries, produce, high-quality meat department, full-service deli, fresh bakery/cake decorating, GK Wine and Spirits Shop, health and beauty section, and more. Located at 937 East Southeast Street, Broken Bow, Nebraska. Thank you to our Purple Ribbon sponsors.
All right, thank you, Cadence. And I believe there's going to be a short little break here before we get into the overall champion and overall reserve champion in market beef. So with that, we'll step away for a second, and when we come back, we will bring you that.
Name is Dolly and weighs 1,160 pounds. Champion Shorthorn Steer is shown by Trip Oxford of the Ansley Junior Livestock 4-H Club. The calf's name is Dan and weighs 1,366 pounds. Champion Hereford Steer is shown by Casey Nelson of the Sandhill Critters 4-H Club. The calf's name is Craig and weighs 1,264 pounds. Champion Red Angus Steer is shown by Quade Smith of the Middle Loop 4-H Club. The calf's name is Red and weighs 1,532 pounds. Champion Sentimental Steer is shown by Cade Smith of the Middle Loop 4-H Club. The calf's name is Elvis and weighs 1,284 pounds. Champion Charlet Steer is shown by Reagan Babcock of the Sandhill Critters 4-H Club. The calf's name is Cy and weighs 1,334 pounds. Champion Crossbred Steer is shown by Allie Smith of the Middle Loop 4-H Club. The calf's name is George and weighs 1,342 pounds. The champion Black Angus Steer is shown by Addison Dalrymple of the Tail Twisters 4-H Club. The calf's name is Barney and weighs 1,294 pounds. The champion Bred and Fed Steer is shown by Riley Barron of the Middle Loop 4-H Club. The calf's name is Bruno and weighs 1,448 pounds. Reserve champion Market Heifer is shown by Charlie Pandorf of the Tail Twisters 4-H Club. The calf's name is Dolly and weighs 1,392 pounds. Reserve Shorthorn Steer is shown by Laney Palmer of the Sandhill Critters 4-H Club. The calf's name is Dale and weighs 1,254 pounds. Reserve Hereford Steer is shown by Emma Stahlbaumer of the Ocano 4-H Club. The calf's name is Jimbo and weighs 1,314 pounds. Reserve Red Angus Steer is shown by Kazin Kaufman Smith of the Middle Loop 4-H Club. The calf's name is Vidalia and weighs 1,514 pounds. Reserve Sentimental Steer is shown by Riggin Fleece of the Sandhill Critters 4-H Club. The calf's name is Angus and weighs 1,362 pounds. Reserves champion Charlet Steer is shown by Cordell Kristen of the Sandhill Critters 4-H Club. The calf's name is Frostbite and weighs 1,212 pounds. Reserve Crossbred Steer is shown by Emma Stahlbaumer of the Ocano 4-H Club. The calf's name is Pumpkin and weighs 1,356 pounds. Reserve Black Angus Steer is shown by Callie Nelson of the Sandhill Critters 4-H Club. The calf's name is Rip and weighs 1,458 pounds. Reserve Bred and Fed Steer is shown by Brennan Barron of the Middle Loop 4-H Club. The calf's name is Leroy and weighs 1,270 pounds.
All right, well, I'm glad the announcer went through all of that because I for sure would have messed that up in some way, shape, or form. We've got cattle all over the show ring. That's how you know we're finding an overall champion and reserve champion in market beef. Again, the judge is going to refamiliarize herself with all of these animals and kind of get things organized a little bit. And then talk through a few things, I'm sure, and then go and shake the hand of our champion and reserve champion. This is big time. This is something we've been building up to all late morning and into the early afternoon. Again, we're running a little bit behind. Scheduled at 3 o'clock, we were to start the FFA side of things with beef, and usually can expect them to take a little short break before they start after 4-H is done. So I'd estimate we're going to be running about 20 to 30 minutes behind once we kind of wrap up here with this champion and reserve champion and market beef for 4-H. We've got 5 cameras going, but I think we'd need 10 to be able to figure out how to get all of this covered for you folks. We'll be getting all this video equipment out next week as well. We've got the Sandhills Open Road Challenge, which is right around the corner. Busy couple of weeks for us here at KCNI KBBN. We again are the official voice of the Sandhills Open Road Challenge. We have broadcasted the races every single year on KBBN 95.3 FM. And the last few years, I think it's been 3 or 4 years now, we have done a video broadcast of at least one of the races. The last few years, we've done a broadcast of every single race thanks to the addition of connectivity from the shootout site on the Cozad-Callaway Road. Thanks to Great Plains Communications for piping in that fiber connection. The cattle out there in that random field on the Cozad-Callaway Road have 1 gig internet just sitting right on a fence pole out in the middle of nowhere, which is faster than I'm sure a lot of us have at home. And they don't even use it for their computers, their laptops, or Wi-Fi. It just sits there throughout the year waiting to be used for the Open Road Challenge.
That's out here, obviously well deserved. You've all done a really nice job. It's been a long day and some of these have been up and going all day, so way to hang in there. You're all doing a really nice job. So yeah, congratulations to each one of you. I'll go through and we can talk about each one, and then I'll get you a champion reserve. But definitely quality all the way from the heifer down to the bred and fed steer here. But young ladies market heifer here that wins that division. I think one that gives you a really nice look from the side. From a phenotypic standpoint, this is a pretty competitive one. I think she's one that's pretty shapely across the top side of her skeleton. She's stout pinned. She's one that has an adequate amount of fat. I wouldn't necessarily say she's ready to hang today, but a pretty good heifer there from the market heifer division. If you were going to change her, I would maybe just like to give her just a little bit more ease and comfortability when you set her out into motion, but a pretty good one there in the heifer hole. Young man shorthorn steer, maybe one that doesn't have quite as much hair as a few of the others. Kind of what you see is what you get. One that's got some muscle shape and expression. I think he's really stout from hooks to pins. He's certainly one that had some good amount of cover on him when you got your hands on him. He's big-footed. Gives you a pretty decent look from the side. If I'm going to change this one, I'd like to see him just take a little bit longer stride. I think he gets a little bit shorter strided, maybe doesn't give as much flex off those rear two as a couple of the others around him, but a pretty good one there in that hole as well. The young lady's Hereford steer here, I think one that in terms of just foot and bone, this is probably one of the bigger footed steers out here in this drive. I really love that about this steer. I think he's really good at the ground, just in bone circumference. He's pretty good when you get your hands on him. He was really fresh. He gives you a pretty good look. He's maybe not just the heaviest steer out here, could use just a touch more through the flank, but I think one that's awfully fresh and gives you a pretty nice look from the side. So really nice Hereford steer. The young man's Red Angus steer here, I think, obviously one that's a little bit more plain in his design, maybe doesn't have just kind of that show ring type of eye appeal to him, gets a little bit heavier up through that front 1/3, but one that, as we discussed him in that division, he has plenty of muscle shape. He's got the fat cover. He's certainly one that's ready to hang a carcass today. He gets out and goes for the size that he's at, just a really practical and functional steer. They're from the Red Angus division. The black and white steer here from the sentimental division, I think one that gives you a pretty good look. He's maybe not quite as neat fronted as a couple of the others that are standing right in behind him here, but I think one that in terms of just muscle and mass, this is a pretty wide set one. You study him in terms of just how pulled apart he is in his chest more and study him at the ground. I think he's one that has a lot of natural shape and muscle expression to him. You get your hands on him, he's got a good amount of finish as well. If I'm going to change this one, I would like to just set him into moving with a little bit more ease. I think he's one that, especially on the rear two, wants to step outside of himself in terms of when he gets out and goes. Maybe doesn't quite feel his track as readily as a few of the others, but a pretty good one there from the sentimental division as well. The young lady's Charlet steer, I think. If I remember correctly, I believe he was a feeder calf here last year, and we liked him a lot, and I believe it's his full sister that actually did pretty well here last year. He's pretty similar in terms of type and kind. He's got some depth of body. He gives you a really soft look. I guess if I'm going to change him, I would like to give him a shot more frame. I think he's getting pretty moderate and just kind of free him up on, as you set him into motion. He's one of the shorter strided steers, but definitely has some pretty unique pieces and really soft in terms of design. He's fresh, has plenty of power and dimension as well. The young lady's black steer there from the crossbred division. I think when you talk structure, this is one of the better structured steers out here. He gets out and goes pretty well. He readily fills his tracks. I think he's good in terms of how much foot and bone he has underneath him. He's one that's pretty attractive up through that front 1/3. Maybe not just the stoutest steer out here. I think the two steers that stand right in front of him probably have just a little more width right out of the top side of their blade, but I do think he is soft. I think he's one that's finished. Just a pretty practical steer that, like I said, gets out and goes, and I do really appreciate that about him. Kind of the same story for the young lady's Angus steer, one that gets out and goes well. I think he's really good in terms of the angle to his shoulder. He's got a good hock set to him. He's soft at the ground. He's really deep-sided and one that has some power for an Angus steer. I think he is one that's pretty unique in terms of just breed representation. He's got a little extra hair. He's got a little extra bone and muscle to him. A pretty nice steer there as well that's got a good amount of finish, one that's really fresh in terms of his design as well. And then we come out to the young lady's bred and fed steer. When you kind of get him out here, maybe he resembles that Red Angus steer as maybe more of a feedlot type of look to him, maybe not just the show ring type of steer, but really good, fundamentally good one. I think a practical one. He's got some muscle shape and dimension to him as well. So honestly, as we bring these steers out here, maybe a little bit of a challenge to really kind of decide where you want to go. I think there's some different things you can do, and I think there's a steer for everybody out here. So regardless of what you like, I think there's definitely some high quality steers, and I can see going a couple different ways. I will say that I'm a pretty big stickler on some structure, but they also need to have some mass at this point. So with that being said, I'm going to pick you a champion in reserve, but let's give these kids a huge round of applause on a really great set of steers.
Okay, so we will now see who our overall champion in market beef is. There's your overall champion. So they will bring in second place from that division. And that would be Abby Stahlbomber right here, who just fell in line. Now picking the reserve champion, overall market beef. Right there is your reserve overall champion in market beef. All comes to a culmination after late afternoon or late morning and early afternoon. All waiting until 3:07 here today to find our champion and reserve champion.
Champion comes from the crossbred steer, shown by Allie Smith. Overall reserve market beef comes from the sentimental class, shown by Cade Smith.
So congratulations to Allie Smith, overall champion in market beef. Cade Smith is the overall reserve market beef.
Sponsors for their banner, we'd like to...
Okay, so up next, as we just heard off of the stream, champion rate of gain being announced, as is reserve rate of gain. So they will do that presentation next. While we have a moment, I want to thank another one of our Purple Ribbon sponsors, the Custer County Ag Society. They welcome you to the Custer County Fair, and they urge you to come out and take in the fun, plenty yet to come in the days ahead. They also want to encourage you to look at the calendar of events for the Custer County Fairgrounds throughout the year at custercountyfair.org. You don't want to miss out on any of the activities going on.
Reserve champion market beef here in Custer County at 2023 Custer County Fair. Now I'd like to award the grand champion and reserve champion rate of gain. Of course, we always want cattle that look good and can walk well so they can get to the feed bunk and put on weight. But also an important aspect of the beef industry is having cattle that are efficient and can put on weight. When we weighed in this year, it was the first Saturday in February, which was February 4th. We actually had a nice day. It wasn't snowing that day, and we got over 40 degrees that day. And also a big thank you to Broken Bow Animal Hospital, because they always allow us to have our market beef weigh-in February at their facility, so we appreciate that. Our February 4 was our initial weigh date, and then of course we weighed here on Sunday, which was July 30th, and if you're calculating number of days on feed, the number of days on feed was 176 days on feed. And this year, if we have anybody here from Team Physical Therapy or First Nebraska Bank Arcadia, you can award these. I don't have to. But our reserve champion beef rate of gain this year weighed initially 495 pounds in February, and on Sunday they weighed 1,270 pounds. Do the math, that's 4.4 pounds per day gain. And the winner for this one is Shaylee Coleman. So congratulations, Shaylee. You can come on out and get your plaque and your ribbon. And our champion rate of gain this year, when we weighed in on February 4th, weighed 737 pounds. Then when we weighed on Sunday, this Charolais steer weighed 1,570 pounds average. So that rate of gain was 4.73 pounds per day. So excellent gain. And Paisley Seta. If Paisley's here, she can come get her award. If not, I'll give it to her grandmother. Stand up, Sue, take a bow. So anyway, you can get this to your granddaughter. Congratulations.
Okay, so Shaylee Coleman, champion rate of gain. Paisley Seta, reserve rate of gain. And with that, I will hand things off to Grant Winterer. He will take over the controls here for the group of 5 beef. And then I'm sure there will be a little bit of a break. And then we will go into FFA beef after that.
Which one are you on? Hold on. You're on 3? What did they say was going on? Do we know? Group of 5?
Yeah, that's what it is.
You left me
Sheep
a goddamn group of 5? Nothing else but the group of 5?
And we are entering our final event of the afternoon here at the Beef Show at the 2023 Custer County Fair. It is the club group of 5 market beef. So we will have 5 clubs presenting 5 steer simultaneously. We've got Ansley Junior Livestock, 4 Corners, Middle Loop 4-H, the Sandhill Critters, and the Tail Twisters. All of whom have brought their 5 best, or the 5 they think work best together, into the ring for Judge Hinrichs to decide what is what. Watermelon feed is going on right now as well. About 20 minutes underway or so. I know they announced it just before 3 o'clock here at the fairgrounds. Beautiful afternoon. The sun has finally poked through It's getting downright hot. And it looks as though our third group of the group of 5 is making their way into the arena and lining up on the top right corner. Judge Hendricks now evaluating the middle group. Hard to believe there's room for all of those steer in this arena, especially when you pack them so tightly, but it is a pretty large space, pretty large mound of dirt. Waiting in the wings, we can see the remaining groups. Everyone's kind of getting their bearings. It's a huge coordinated effort. Got one that's broken loose and it's making its way now towards us at the grandstands here. Very nice. Seems like it calms down a little bit after it breaks free, but probably a little ornery, I'd imagine. It's been a long, hot day for a lot of these animals and people. Here they come now. And it looks like our last of 5 groups is making its way into the arena. 2 groups of all black steer. And one that seems to be particularly ornery. Looks as though our judge is making her way to the podium, presumably to talk things over, get a microphone, and perhaps we will be crowning a champion here quicker than anticipated as Judge Hendricks turns it on, and we'll see what she's got to say.
5 good club pen of 5s out here. Maybe some difference between a few of them. I think a lot of them have pretty good groups in terms of size. A couple of them do have maybe a steer or 2 that's a little bit smaller, kind of throwing off that really uniform type of look. But your champion pen is going to be the Middle Loop, was that right? Middle Loop Club here. They have probably the closest in terms of weight. They've got the champion market steer, the reserve champion market steer, champion market heifer, and champion reserve bred and fed. So really high quality. They're all pretty close in weight there. The reserve champion is going to go ahead and be over here in the corner. You guys are, you're going to have to remind me. What's your club called? Sandhills Critters. Okay. They also have some pretty high quality stuff. We've got the reserve champion Angus, the reserve champion Charlet, the reserve champion Red Angus, or Shorthorn, excuse me, the champion Hereford, and the champion Char. So maybe not quite as uniform in terms of size, but I think high quality there. And then we'll do blue ribbons here on the others, but I think definitely some quality animals, maybe just have 1 or 2 animals in there that's kind of throwing off the size ratio there. But I went around, we talked about them. So let's give a big round of applause on these clubs for doing a nice job and bringing their cattle out here.
So there you have it. Taking home the championship for the Group of 5 Market Beef will be Middle Loop 4-H. And your reserve champion for the Group of 5 Market Beef is the Sandhill Critters. Cadence Fellman, what did you think?
Well, there's a lot of good-looking calves out here.
It's hard to kind of keep them straight. We've got 25 out here in a row, and we can see that old Judge Hinrichs had a little bit of a problem there keeping clubs straight as she went along, but that's kind of just par for the course, I suppose.
Yeah. There's a lot of clubs, and they're really fun to be a part of a club. So if you are a part of 4-H, I would definitely recommend you get into a club. You get to do projects together, and just having someone that if you quite don't know what you're doing, you have someone that you can go talk to. So.
Yeah, I always forget that you in fact are a 4-H'er, and in fact just put up some submissions yourself, not in the Custer County Fair, but in your own county fair.
Yes, so I do 4-H in the Sherman County Fair, and I am a part of a 4-H club, the Litchfield Rockin' Kids. And I've had some submissions. I've got 2 art pieces that are going to the state fair.
Wow.
So, yeah, and a lot of kids from Custer County, too. You can go to the state fair and see a lot of their work, too. So, yeah.
It's just a great event. Huge turnout today. I was very impressed with how the market beef shows from sunup to sundown. We got here at, I think it was 6:30 in the morning, and weirdly enough, it was already kind of difficult to find a parking spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, our champion for the Group of 5 Market Beef once again was Middle Loop 4-H, and the reserve champion for the Group of 5 Market Beef was the Sandhill Critters. We will go over now some of the previous champions as we watch our Group of 5s leave the arena. The day started with the senior showmanship, which is always quite a treat. And our senior showmanship champion this year was Abby Stahlbaumer, and followed by the reserve champion for senior showmanship was Mahea Jones, which was a riveting way to kick off the day, in fact. Both 2 incredible competitors, and in a little bit of a twist, it will be Mahea Jones who will represent the market beef for overall showmanship towards the end of the week, because I believe Abby Stahlbaumer had won it previously. I think it was last year. In the junior showmanship, Addison Dalrymple took home the overall championship, and the reserve champion was Casey Nelson, I believe. Am I reading that right? I thought I might have. When it's someone else's handwriting, you really kind of struggle with it. In the pre-junior showmanship, our champion was, I cannot even read that for the life of me. Burke Blakeman is who it was, and Talon Tobias was your reserve champion for the pre-junior showmanship. Your overall grand champion beef showman was, as we kind of spoiled it earlier, Abby Stahlbaumer, and the reserve was Mahea Jones. In the overall competition for showmanship later this week, of course, we will see Mahea represent beef, which I think is very cool. Now on to some handwriting that I can read. The market heifers for the champion market heifer belonged to Talon Tobias, and the reserve market heifer was Charlie Pandorf, so that rounded out a class of 12 for those. The shorthorn steer was a short class this year, if you will. There were only 4. with first place going to Trip Oxford, and the reserve Shorthorn steer champion was Laney Palmer. Hereford steers, the champion was Casey Nelson, and the reserve champion was Emma Stallbomber, so 2 Stallbombers showing out pretty well for their steer. Quade Smith would take home the Red Angus Steer Championship, and the reserve Red Angus Steer champion would be Kazan Kaufman-Smith. For Simmentals, Cade Smith would be your champion, and the reserve champion would be Riggin Fleece. And that sort of put us into the afternoon. I think we took a break after Hereford. Reagan Babcock was your champion Charolais steer. You had your champion Charolais steer, and your reserve champion was Cordell Christian. Then we moved into crossbred steers, which was a pretty sizable division this year. It looks like there were 25 divided across 3 groups and 3 weight classes, and your champion there was Allie Smith, and your reserve champion, Emma Stallbomber. Then we moved on to the Black Angus steer, where we also found Addison Dalrymple taking home your championship, and the reserve was Callie Nelson. That time I could read it. Your bred and fed steers, overall champion was Riley Barron, and the reserve champion was Brennan Barron, so they know what they're doing over there in the Barron household. And the overall champion of market beef was Allie Smith with a crossbred steer, and the reserve champion was Cade Smith. As far as rate of gain, your champion was going to be Shaylee Coleman, and Paisley Seda was your reserve. And then, of course, that brings us to our final event of the day, which was the group of 5s. And Middle Loop was your group of 5 champion, and your reserve champion was the Sand Hill Critters. I believe that concludes our coverage, our video coverage at least, for the Beef Show and the 2023 Custer County Fair. Thank you so much for joining us periodically throughout the afternoon, or perhaps for the entire day. Caden's final thoughts.
It's been a great day. Great day of watching these amazing 4-H'ers with their animals. It's not an easy task. I only did it for 1 year, and there's a reason for that. So, I mean, these 4-H'ers, they did a great job today.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. It's definitely not easy. No matter the size of the animal, we saw pigs, we saw sheep yesterday, and now to even get the animals bigger. Some of these were even more well-behaved than the smaller ones that I saw yesterday, but no doubt it takes a lot to make this happen for these kids, and each one, I think, should be absolutely thrilled with really just showing up and doing the work to get here to begin. Well, from myself, from Cadence Feldman, from Jeremy Shipe, who promised us watermelon and has yet to deliver, we will see you all tomorrow, and thank you so much for joining us today.